Yep. Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is the POCD Core Committee, also a Special Planning Commission meeting, combined meeting. It's January 16, 2025. It's 7 o'clock p.m. and we are in room 209 at the Town Hall. The roll call. I usually do this. Yeah, I'll do this. This will be easier. I'm Scott Dale. I'm here. Linda Taylor is here, who is a regular member of Planning, actually Secretary of Planning. Mark Lowengardt, who's a regular member of Planning, is also here. We have Eric Myers, who is a new alternate for Planning, who is here, as well as Elaine Tomadio as well. On this side, we have Tony Capiello, who is the chair of the Conservation Commission, Kurt Timmerman, who is the chair of the Zoning Commission, Jim Fisher, the chair of the Economic Development Commission, Laura, who is here. Not on my list, but I'll mention your name. And then we have our friends from the BFJ. I'll let you.
It's Frank Fish, I'm the principal of BFJ, and
I'm Emily Tolbert, I'm the project manager for the POCD.
All right. Number 2 is review of the previous meeting minutes. Have to figure out who was here, who was not. Any comments, questions, edits, or otherwise?
Just two little quick questions. On line 88, it's talking about the student meeting, and it's we were talking about lots of focus was on the old school building. And I don't know which old school building that was referring to. I mean, Scott, you might have talked about that, because you were at the high school that day?
I wrote up the notes so we can modify them. I think those are taken maybe from my notes, but I think Scott was saying that the students had seen the new school at Candlewood Lake, and that they felt that their high school was old in comparison. Yeah.
Well,
They wanted.
There was also a member there, who was leading the ad hoc committee for that building, the old center school.
Oh,
That's why I didn't know they were talking about the high school or
okay.
center school.
That's what they
It
were
might have
referring
been
to,
that.
yeah.
Oh, it's the old
That's what
center
they
school.
were
Oh,
referring
yeah.
And the only other one, I had a question around line 157, 58. It was noted, talking about the Four Corners and about the parade, about that the district was working as, when the yearly parade must be moved due to lack of parking.
I'm not sure about that.
And I didn't know lack of parking at the existing parade route or at the downtown, the Four Corners area, lack of parking. So that was just a clarity, I guess.
just my recollection, I'm not sure, I have to check our notes, it was Four Corners that they were
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
would agree.
It was
Okay.
for
I think I made a comment, and one of the things I said was, I think I was saying that we would know that we kind of hit a mark if we start to consider moving the parade from where it is right now near the high school to
And that's what
center
I
school
figured that.
to the Four Corners or the town center area.
But there's a lack of parking, so it could be a problem.
Yeah, I don't know, recall referring to parking as a
I think it
reason.
might have been two
I think it was
different
more
comments
just
that got
how we build up the town center to a certain status, within, for the residents there.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah, I don't-
impression I got from
Yeah.
what you said at that meeting.
I don't recall parking being part of my comments anyway.
I just wanted,
Yep.
clarity on it, I guess, because I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. I mean, it's a sidebar, I guess, would say, I've not been actively involved in the parade because we have family obligations that weekend, and it seems like it might be a hard,
It
Pull
was
to get
sort of
in.
something I just threw out there, not necessarily an area of focus, but no, thank you for pointing that out. So, 2 updates that Jim has noted. Are there any others?
No, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting
With the 2,
with the 2 amendments.
yep. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion on this? If you were here, please vote. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. You were here, you were here. Okay. Do you have that?
No abstentions?
No abstentions? Yeah, I
Just
think
double
all-
checking.
Yeah. I think Eric would be, if that's what he would.
Yeah, what's it,
Yeah.
that means you guys wouldn't vote.
Okay. Very good. Correspondence, we have a memo from Nancy Knorr of 4 Dogwood Lane. I believe that it pertains to the Shores. Any comments on that?
Sure, I'd like
Yep.
to make a comment.
Mhm.
I'm not sure where she got her information from, except from real estate, but that zone, for as far as I know, has always been a 7,000 square foot zone.
Mhm.
And it might have been that Candlewood Shores had their own regulations layered on top of ours that had a larger lot requirement of .21 or 9,500 square feet instead of 7,000. 7,000 square feet is .16 acres. That said, we had made some changes in the rewrite because we saw some of these houses going up that were quite tall. And the ZBA, I guess it was ZBA at the time, but as we got into the rewrite, we didn't want that to happen. So we had restrictions on height based on the R7 zones, or heights of all, different zones, what the maximum height could be, as well as the level, the average level of the land, pre-development, and the height based on that. Because what some were doing in the short, especially when they sloped down, they were building up their lots so they could have a taller house and maybe see the lake or something. So we recognized that during the rewrite, and we did some things to ameliorate the problems, just like Nancy Knorr was seeing. And of course, this is the sort of thing we want to listen to. And if there's going to be a change, it would have to be a zoning reg change, and of course, public input and everything else. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I got my impression was that she's almost comparing it to like some things you see if you drive along the western Manhattan with the skyline.
Oh,
You see like an apartment build up to here and then another one goes here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But on obviously lesser scale with the shores. Yeah. So so this is feedback that we would perhaps
yeah.
add to.
We thought it's worth putting something about it in the plan.
Yeah.
For several reasons. One, it's for me as a planner, I guess, I go back to the state plan, which, as I said before, was really a sewer avoidance plan.
Mhm.
And the state plan originally said you should really have and encourage some density where you have sewer. But where you don't have it, they encourage zoning as you have now. You have R40, R60,
Yeah.
R80, R100, and they don't need sewer. Those densities normally don't need sewer unless you have really poor soil that won't perk well. And with the new septics, they'll work in all of those lot sizes. But 7,000 square feet is tough to
Yeah,
make
it's a
septics
small
work.
lot. They were
And
camp
so-
homes,
Yeah,
on the
that's
lake.
right, and,
Yeah.
but the other thing is the smaller lots like that, I have seen other communities be a little bit careful of the height, and it might be worth something that we mention in the plan, or look at a little bit. We haven't looked at it yet, we got this letter and said, oh
Yeah.
gee, maybe
Well,
we
we
should
did
look,
put it in there.
yeah, we
Yeah,
put
there's
it
a
in.
It's
line
in the
or two
draft.
in the
Yeah, it's in
draft
the draft, yeah.
along those lines.
But what I'm wondering about is whether we should look more carefully at the area and bulk standards and
Mhm.
see if they match other communities in terms of R7, R75, those
Yeah.
types of things.
And, the way with vacant lots and pre-exist, if you have a vacant lot there, you're grandfathered in, you can, it's still a buildable lot. You change it to our, 10,000 or something, you can't make the lot unbuildable. They have a hardship now,
Yeah,
that they could get a variance for making their land worthless.
yeah.
But we have another part in the zoning regs, that if you have common ownership of 2 lots and one's undersized, below 7,000, automatically merge, so we create
Oh,
a
that's a good-
larger lot.
yeah. That's something that's good to
The
do.
provisions of that has never finally been.
It's happened a couple times, as long as they
Kind
don't
of.
sell it.
As long as they don't sell it.
But it might be worth just, because for us, you have a classic example of the wisdom of the state plan.
Mhm.
Don't have that type of density without sewer. And, you know, that's a classic example here. But I haven't, you know, it's one of those things that's hard to solve now, you know.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
realize it's real hard, and as you say, it's hard to change. I wouldn't, you know, I didn't mean changing, for instance, the lot size from 7 to 10 and make everybody non-conforming.
No, but setbacks, but setbacks and things like that.
Yeah, looking at setbacks or, looking at, and you probably don't have anything, and I'm not suggesting this necessarily, but I've seen some communities do some residential FARs, so they control total size that can go on the site.
Yeah, and Candlewood Shores did, but
Yeah.
I don't know what their process is for changing the rules.
Yeah,
So maybe perhaps less stringent, you know. Here, we have to have a public hearing of the whole town.
oh, yeah, no, I was talking
And
about
for
the
them, you
towns
know,
of-
whatever their
yeah.
regulations are,
Yeah,
it's just them.
It's up to them,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but,
And they could have changed in the last 25 years, I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Do they
But
have a
Candlewood-
separate zoning? I mean,
They're
No.
taxed district,
But they have their own,
they still have to follow the town's regs, though?
Yes.
Okay,
They can,
okay.
yeah.
you can't be
they
less
can be more
restrictive.
restrictive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They can have some association rules,
Mhm.
Yes,
but it's the town zoning code that sets
Correct.
the
the
minimum
absolute
standard.
Minimum
standards. Yeah.
And they have their own taxing district there too, so they're
I
all
see.
private roads in there.
I see, okay, yeah,
I think it's.
yeah. It's like,
Interesting history.
it almost sounds like Connecticut used to have in some areas, boroughs.
Yeah,
Like there used to be Groton Borough, it's become a city now. And I haven't run into boroughs very much.
Naugatuck.
Naugatuck, right. So there's some remnants of that throughout the state, but
Mm.
your town zoning prevails, as I understand it,
yeah.
yeah. So we could, you know,
They used to have that in Newtown, didn't they, too?
They do have the borough,
borough.
that's hence the town, yep, correct. Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
They still have a center that they call the borough in Naugatuck. I
yeah.
mean,
It's-
in Newtown.
In Newtown,
T-
yeah.
Those end towns.
Only
Well, our
because my
Newtown-
daughter lives in it, so.
Yeah, our new town plan is up for a vote, adoption,
Oh,
next week.
Oh, really?
Fingers crossed for you.
Really?
Yeah, I hope they adopt it, because we just made hard copies for every member of the commission. It says adopted such and such
Yeah.
date next Thursday night, so I hope it's, yeah.
So,
Okay, sorry.
anything else we should consider with this feedback? We should probably consider that when we get to those areas, right?
Yeah.
Those parts of the POCD.
I think so.
Okay.
I have one, the feedback came, how did it come to us? To Amy and the land use office, or?
This came through the land use POCD portal. So on the POCD website, there
Yeah.
is an option for them to email. When they email, it comes to me, and then we distribute it
Okay.
to all of you.
All right.
All of you.
Yes, I
I mean,
know.
prouder gesture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we got it from Laura.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's a good question, though. What do we do with this feedback? How do we get it? We want to encourage more, obviously,
Yeah.
right? So make sure that we're addressing it in the proper areas. All right, any other?
Is there a system, you respond to it that has been brought up to the meeting, at least so she knows it's been looked at, or?
I think she's probably watching,
Okay.
because that's how she made reference to watching.
That's true.
Yeah, I got that sense in reading her letter. that she-
Yeah.
did you get an email that said she was taking some of their comments back? Cause I think I don't know if I can find it in my phone. I got a second email from her.
Oh, no, I think it was from Laura. Laura
Laura?
recalled
Oh,
the
okay, you
message.
I
she
did
got.
recall a message because
Yeah.
I attached it to the wrong one.
Mhm, okay, all
So
right.
don't read that.
Don't
Okay,
read that.
okay, all right.
That was my mistake.
Okay.
This is why it's not good when my admin's off for the day.
I'm sorry.
No, no, you're fine.
All right, well, we're good with that. We'll move on to the next area of the agenda, which is the plan of conservation and development. And this is where turned over to
Yeah, okay. I'll start with just the project timeline, which is, first thing, and I think you have on the next page a reduced version of maybe?
Looks like this. It
Yeah,
should
looks
be
like
on the
the
back.
timeline looks
Oh,
like
looks
this,
like on the-
yeah.
Agenda.
So, we have extras of these, I think we do.
Just
right?
gotta get-
They're in, so it's this, here.
It has not changed, right?
Has not changed, yeah, it's in- and,
It's changed a little. I added the
and-
dates on there.
yeah, the
Okay.
dates have been added. So you should have this color copy of the timeline, and the only thing I wanted to say, particularly for Eric and Elaine, because you're probably seeing this for the first time, but the major thing on this is we are pretty much on schedule. So, and I think we are gonna make a real attempt to stay, on schedule, so this can be ready for adoption, as you can tell, before the end of the year, because we're trying to finish by November. We think we're okay on that. It's a relatively, good schedule, comfortable schedule, one that I think we can meet. But where we are, and as Emily just said, we're starting to put in dates when we met with you, or hope to meet with you in the future. So, we're here at 116 under the sort of orange dot there,
Yeah.
where it says, POCD committee meetings.
Yeah, I think we had agreed to the third Thursday of every.
Yes,
Yes.
thanks, Scott.
They're
Yeah,
all on
yes.
here.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
third Thursday,
And I
goes
see you
right-
have the April 22nd on there for the next workshop.
which is the
Yes.
workshop, yeah. And thanks, Scott, because we wanted to emphasize that workshop a bit too
Yep.
tonight on the schedule, that for April 22nd, that's our second workshop, and we hope to, have that on, so that we can have roundtable discussions, and by that time, we hope to have the results of the survey, and we'll talk about the survey in a minute. And we hope to have most of the chapters, all the key chapters, to you by that time. We'll go through, there's the introductory chapter, demographics, land use and zoning, you see them under section 3 there. We're up through housing, and then we've given you also chapter 7, which is community and cultural facilities. But we are working on, I think most of you met Thomas Madden in some of the past meetings. He's working a little bit with Greg on the economic development chapter now. And then I think some of you may have met, any?
Mark
Mark,
hasn't
you haven't
come.
met, well, you'll meet Mark, he'll be at the second workshop. And he's working on transportation and the transportation chapter, transportation and mobility. He's got the maps done, and by the way, I told Scott earlier, we were down to look at this area that the fire chief or fire marshal had mentioned he was worried about in terms of getting fire access. So we were down there earlier because that'll be in the transportation chapter. It's an industrial area.
Vale Road.
Vale Road, thanks, I am terrible, I just drove the road twice, and, this afternoon, and, so, for me, that's a longer term comp plan issue. I don't think that we need to get into detail on it, but there is an access there via Vale Road, you don't have to go under railroad tracks to get in and out. The question is Vale Road a public road? And if it is, or even if it's not, it's, we drove over it, yes, it is paved. Looks like it was paved 30 years ago to me. It needs a lot of work. It should be repaved, but I think if transportation chapter, we can say the road's there, and we ought to make sure that you have adequate easements over it if it's owned by the railroad. But there's single-family homes along it,
Yeah.
but it does
Weird.
provide access to the industrial site where a fire truck does not have to drive under the railroad track, either one of those tracks.
It creates, what it does though, it brings up semis, tanker trucks up Stony Hill Road, which is all residential. And
Yes.
so they come driving up there and they try to make that turn into
Yeah.
Vale Road
Vale
from
Road.
Stony
Into
Hill.
Vale Road,
That
yeah.
poor woman on the corner, her trees get knocked down every
Yeah,
so often.
Yeah, well, that is an issue in terms of access to it, but I was reading, fire people had mentioned
Yeah.
that, you couldn't get a fire truck under the railroad tracks, they don't have to.
Yeah.
They can go down Vale Road, they're an
Yeah.
emergency vehicle, they can go down that road, if I can go down it
I
in my
think
car.
they were saying that they
They
needed
go
two egress.
Well, that's.
It's another issue,
Yeah,
another
that's another issue
chapter.
for another time.
Yes.
We'll put it in the plan, in the transportation chapter though, we'll get that in. into the transportation chapter, and Mark's working on that now. And then a very important chapter to us, because you've all said it, everyone's told us that, sewer and the WPSCA and water, and so the infrastructure chapter, that's our engineers, Ty and Bond, are working on that chapter now. So we've got 3 separate groups working on these chapters, so I'm fairly confident we'll have everything, to you, in terms of those chapters, by April. The only one our internally we're working on now, or we'll start working on, is the natural resources open space chapter. So I think we've got a team that's, everyone's responsible for their chapters, so I think we'll get those to you in a fairly orderly manner. So our hope is that on April 24th, Tuesday, 22nd, sorry. Shows you why I should wear my glasses. April 22nd, we hope to have like maybe 5 or 6 round tables. They don't have to be round. Just have tables so we can have round table discussions. And we hope to have a resource person at those tables, and we hope to have, perhaps one of you, if you could all break up at one of the tables too. And all the tables, our view is all the tables can talk about everything in the plan. However, one table might have a label on it that says transportation. That's where our transportation person will be. The other table, like economic development, I'm sure Greg would sit at that table, but our person, Thomas Mann, can sit at that table. And we'll have a table on housing, we'll have a table on natural resources, and we'll have Ty and Bond, or, one of us will sit at a table on the utilities. So that's the idea for that second workshop.
So we have at least, 6 or 7 different chapters that we're gonna have to review.
Yes,
Right?
yeah, you're gonna have
Before
to.
the workshop in April, we've got 3 meetings, inclling this one,
Yeah.
between now and then.
Yeah,
Yes.
Can we do this?
I think so.
Okay.
We're gonna,
We
yeah.
keep moving.
Yeah, we'll
today.
keep moving today. Yeah, good, okay, Emily will keep us on schedule here.
Taskmaster.
And so I think we are going to be able to do that. Now, it doesn't have to be, remember, these don't have to be perfect on 422. In fact, we don't want them to be, and we don't want to have the future land use plan and implementation done at 422. We want people to see all the basic chapters, then discuss the issues, hey, were we fairly on board about what the issue is here and what our tentative recommendations are before you get to the final chapter 10 would be written after the workshop, so that you then get that and it incorporates what we heard from the workshop. And then that 5:15 meeting in May, on the top line where you get the orange, that May meeting's important to us because we don't want to produce anything until after you reviewed everything on May 15th, because then we would go back, do any revisions that you want to the chapters. And then our hope was that over the summer, July and August, it's the unique thing about Connecticut state law, you gotta not kill 65 days, but, Westcog gets 65 days to review the plan. And we felt, well, the summer's a good time to do it, because you wanna have their comments, because you wanna be able to hold a hearing, would like to be able to hold a hearing in September. So it's after the summer, you don't get criticized for any the worst time to hold a public hearing is between, well, the worst time is between Christmas and New Year's, but the other worst time is August. And that way, you let Westcog have their 65-day review. And so you get any comments from them, and they're ready, you know what they are, the public hearing, or they could give them to you at the public hearing if they want. And then we've reserved time after that to meet on what you heard at the public hearing, what revisions you want done. And then we get them done so that when it comes back to you, you have an adoptable plan.
But it also has to go through planning and the board of selectmen as well.
Yes,
Yes.
oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gotta go as well,
Mhm.
I mean, well, you are I was gonna say, you are the planning commission.
We're represented
So,
here. That's
you're all
one of the reasons
represented.
why we're here.
You're the chief, you're the one adopting. And, but it's gotta go to what's called your legislative body, which is your selectmen, right? And then also, some communities do send it to OPM for just a review for the state plan. We think this will be, your plan now conforms to the state plan, I think, and I don't see any reason why this would not conform. I don't see, but we're only halfway through, so. So it's good to send it to OPM also. And, but I would send it zoning commission, you know, and this is good because we got zoning represented, we got economic development represented, we got conservation represented, so you can go to all of your groups over the summer. Everybody has a chance then to make comments at the public hearing. And so that's the schedule, or that's a big picture schedule, I know.
Right.
But that's the overall schedule. And maybe immediately the
So to
next.
stay in pace, we've gotta go through a couple of these chapters, each one of these meetings.
Each one of the meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're hoping tonight to, go through housing a little bit and go through community facilities with you. And by the way, these are living chapters in the sense, we're gonna come back, for instance, on chapter 1. We really can't write all of chapter 1 quite yet. It's the introductory chapter. And we also want it to be, at the end, just a little bit of, what was the public participation process? And, a little bit about the vision, and that needs to be added into chapter 1 at the end. So there'll be things like that where we'll touch it up. But the item 2 here, we just wanted to give you an update on the stakeholder meetings very quickly, and Emily's gonna do that, and then I'll just touch on the public survey.
Yes, so the stakeholder meetings, just to let you know, a lot of these have informed us for the writing of the community facilities chapter. And please, this is not, like Frank said, it's a living document. So if you see something that's incorrect, we're not from Brookfield. We don't know this community. You know it a lot better than us. Scott's already given us some feedback about some community facility items that we had missed. So we encourage you to do that. So for community facilities chapter, we've met with the Parks and Recreation Director, the Library Director, the Youth Bureau Director, the Human Services Director, both fire chiefs, the Superintendent of Schools, Community Center Ad Hoc Committee, the Police Chief, the Community Development Director, which is Greg, Capital Planning Committee Chair, Public Works Director, Candlewood Fire that's also the other fire chief. And then we're hoping to still meet with the Commission on Aging and Historic Preservation Commission, which we have communicated with. And then we've also started on some of the community engagement for transportation chapter that we'll be talking about at the next meeting. So we've had a call with Hart Transit and Public Works, and then we've also so for the housing chapter that we're going to discuss today, a lot of that information does come from Greg Dembowski, your community development director, right? And also a lot of other documents that he's put together in the past. He's been tracking the development in the town very closely. Yes, and then we'll start scheduling meetings for the open space, natural resources, and sustainability chapter, and we'll be meeting with people like the health department, the lake authorities, and so forth. And then also our sub-consultant, Thomas Madden, is meeting with, he's met with Greg Dembowski, and he's also meeting with some of the developers who work in the town and some business owners in the town.
And then we're meeting with Greg again this coming
yes.
Wednesday, just on economic development, and then we're meeting with the first selectman
And the Board of Finance.
and the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
so-
And then, yes, also our sub-consultants, Kai and Bond, will be listening in on some of these calls, but they're also talking to the Water Pollution Control Authority, Aquarian Water, we'll talk to the Energy Advisory Board, and First Light, who owns the lakes.
Yeah. So it's so we've got, but
We got a lot
they're
of
set,
work.
we've already met
We
with,
gotta do it.
we've already met with a good number of people, and so we've got all these set up with different people, and we're trying to set up what Emily said, so. Another item which is here, which I think is ready to go, is item 2B here on our agenda, the public survey, and that, the survey's all included in your packet. We had discussed it with you at the last meeting, we sent it out to everybody, and any comments were made, we made sort of adjustments to it. So we believe it's ready to go. What we want to do, though, is set a date by which we put it up. We're kind of hoping for the end of next week. If we have a date to work to, we'll make sort of 8.5 by 11. We need to publicize it, so we publicize it online, but we thought, Laura, we thought some posters or, some things in flyers, town hall,
Social
library.
media posts.
Yeah, social media is gonna
I know I
be
can do the economic development Facebook page. I
Yeah.
know the libraries, if they're willing
Yeah.
to blast it out for me as well.
that'd be
Yes.
great.
Yeah, all the
So-
stakeholders that we met with, actually, I mentioned it to them, so they're all also on board. Like, the school said they could send it out to their email list.
They're ready to go.
Yeah.
And we hope to do it mostly online. We'll send you some hard copies, though, we gotta remember hard copies for the library. There may be some people who might
And the
say
senior center, probably.
to you that, they don't have access to a computer or don't wanna fill it out that way, so we always do a couple of a few hard copies. And then, we'd like to do it online, because this is a Survey Monkey and it's all gonna be, it'll all be
Tallied online.
tabulated.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, we thought that it could be, a 3-week period maybe, open it up like next Thursday or Friday, go into February. And that's all on our timeline, by the way, we had it,
Yeah.
we're right around in
So
schedule.
is
We
the
had
goal,
it-
I was gonna ask, is the goal there then to have the results before the February meeting, or is that just?
Well, our big goal was to have the results all
And
done,
target them.
of course, prior to the workshop,
Yes,
so that everybody can see it online. But in thinking about that, if we can have them for the February meeting, I think you were thinking of that, Emily.
Yeah, so we're thinking a target date of January 27th to open the survey, so that will give us next week to actually, we have to put it into Survey Monkey, and we need to create the
Publicize.
flyer and create the press release and everything, so that Laura will have that on Monday to get it
So
going.
then we'd have to put a closing date on it, but it would be in February, say, probably around the 15th to 20th, somewhere. We should
Yeah.
pick a date on that. We usually do 3 weeks, because if you do too much longer, people get it and they say, oh, I'll do that later. And they never do it later.
Yeah.
But if you do only 1 week, they can be pressed for time and you don't get so we found in 2 or 3 weeks, it's gotta be up there and publicized. And, if you get a last minute request from some organization, we need more time, fine. But, we find that that's good. And then once we get it,
My goodness.
we use the Survey Monkey program and we can tabulate everything.
So is it possible to add one more choice to one of the questions?
Yes,
Yes, yeah.
Because I noticed, this is about community facilities. Used to be question 16, now it's 17. We talked about improvements to existing parks and open spaces, that kind of fell out. But maybe something like, and I know there's a lot of bullet points there, year-round access to enjoy shoreline of Candlewood Lake. Because
Oh.
I know it's in your chapters that you've started writing, but I'm afraid if it's not in here and we don't get feedback on, access to Candlewood Lake, because there was, in the chapters, it was talked about winterizing
yes.
the building and security cameras, so people could actually be there over the winter. Right now, it's only open 3 months of the year, and access to the actual lake.
what is open, sorry?
Candlewood Lake.
Across from.
Right,
Oh, the park, the
Yeah,
town
the
park, I'm
park.
sorry.
Well, no, the facility you're talking about.
There's a facility in the park, you
Yeah,
can't
okay.
get into it.
Right.
Oh, the park, yeah, I was thinking
Yeah.
Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would be year-round access to Candlewood Lake at the park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's the town's only access to Candlewood Lake, isn't it?
The town, yeah.
Yeah. That we can control.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just explain the adjustment I made on those questions there. When we met with the capital planning committee chair,
Mhm.
he said, well, we had this conversation about the cost of some of these large ticket items over the next 10 years, like a new police station, converting the old Candlewood, I keep calling it Candlewood School, the center school, the old center school. Those can be very, like $20 million projects, and right now we understand that the debt service is going downward, but it's gonna be, you know, you could probably fit only a couple of these really large ticket items in the next 10 years. And so we wanted to kind of get a sense of what the community's priorities are about those expenses. So that question 16.
Oh, no, we'll go under 17.
17.
Yes, but I added that question 16
Oh,
just to
yes.
kind of get a sense of what
Okay.
people prioritize for those larger ticket items, and it
Sure.
seemed a little redundant, so that's why I had taken out the option on the question below. But I think what you're telling me now is something that I wasn't as aware of, like the Candlewood Park access. So we'll add that in.
Yeah, so we'll add that in, we'll add it in.
Yeah, because that could be a not as expensive bonded item.
That's not an
Yes,
expensive
yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Not compared to
And
the police station.
And maybe nobody's interested, or maybe a lot of
Yeah,
people are.
yeah, I'll find out. So that's a good one. So once we, oh, yes,
I just have a quick question. Do you have any expectations or goals for the number of participants on this survey?
we do. We like to
I mean, it's
get,
hard to get these surveys filled out. I mean,
it's very hard
So,
but our goal is if we could get a 5% return, by that I mean 5% of the
Of
families,
17,000.
of 17,000 people. If we can get 5%, that's good. That's good. It's just, it's today's world. I mean, you've got so many things, we all know, you know, that you get bombarded with. And so getting much higher than that is considered, you know, very good. On the other hand, you know, 2% is not so great.
no, I was just
So,
curious. because
yeah,
I didn't
and in
know if
raw
there was
numbers,
some
we
self-imposed
really
standard
like
or-
to get a couple hundred responses. So it's,
I'm not
but,
sure what we can learn with it from the previous survey we did. If there's something, I don't know, our strategy. I think we kind of, that was, we didn't really promote it as much. It was more like, you know, just throw some stuff at a wall for
Yeah.
us so we can get an idea. So
And even this.
maybe there's some tricks you know.
This'll be, I know, I hope, you know, as you said, it's got publicized, so we're making an effort. We mentioned this at the first workshop, I'm sure people have not
Yep.
remembered that. So we've got to get some publicity out there, but we found on these, if we can get that 5%, we're in pretty good shape. But I would say, to mention to you, it's still self-selection. This is not a scientific random sample
Right,
survey,
yeah. Interesting.
which are expensive to do. And, you know, it's a different type of survey. But this is a snapshot in time, just as the workshop is. And the workshop is self-selected, as you know. It's, however, we had a rainy night, do I remember
Yes, it
correctly?
was very
Fairly rainy night, and, you know, there were, 20 of us there, so. So it's, you know, we're learning, but does everyone, you know, we'll try in the second workshop. Hope it's a nice night, and it's April. So we hope it's a nice night, and we can have the workshop, and we'll get a good turnout, you'll get feedback. You are getting feedback from people who tend to be the more interested or more involved, or they're clearly opposed to something. So far, we haven't got the latter, because I think what I'm perceiving is, so far, we haven't identified, we didn't see at our first workshop a group of people who were absolutely opposed to something. If I remember the first workshop, I think, you know, people made some good comments, and it was a good workshop, so. But I find when you don't, I gave you Orange, Connecticut as an example, because we're just in Orange right now, in the same sort of process, about halfway through it, another group of people in the office, and they all looked at me when I said to them originally that the only thing in Orange that's gonna give us big controversy is if Stu Leonard, I know this, I love Stu Leonard's, but is if Stu Leonard's consummates the deal. There are negotiations with somebody, and a New York group who wants too much money for the site, so Stu Leonard's isn't probably gonna come in. But if suddenly, before our next workshop, there's a huge headline, Stu Leonard signs, we'll have 100 people at the workshop without any publicity for it, because they're opposed to something. And I understand it, it's traffic, it's, you know, other things in that area, but they haven't. So we've had very calm meetings and workshops in Orange, people are pretty happy with the town, and so, you know, that's that's a sort of long answer to your question. This is, you know, you actually have opposition. A lot of people are pretty happy with the town.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna get a good, I hope, a good response, but I don't expect a 10 or 15% response. That would be very high.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, but how many people sign up for the Spotlight? Do you know offhand?
I do not.
That, I mean, that
But
goes
I
out,
do send it via Spotlight, I send our survey.
you know, I mean, that goes out in the
Spotlight.
first of the month, I believe, and I'm just thinking,
Okay.
you know, you got the senior center, you got the library, you got all the commissions.
If we can get it out. and
All the commissions are, can get blasted. I mean, there's a couple hundred people right there in commission members, I would think.
I send it, yes. to
You know,
all
and then maybe you hit
commission
the soccer clubs, the baseball clubs, any of the Pop Warners. I mean, anything we can do to get it out there. I think there is a way to get more participation. I mean, it's a lot easier to fill out a 10-minute survey than to come to the high school on a rainy night, you know?
They're dumping out,
And
that's right.
I think if the town puts an effort in it, you know, maybe a front page story or something in the News Times somehow,
Yeah.
you know, and
Well,
there are
there's-
people that will come out and say they are gonna be
We'll
against some
draft
things that are
press
going on in
Thank
town.
you.
By the way, we will draft a press release if you can get it out, yeah, and we'll do that. That is very helpful. If the paper, you know, your local paper does something like that, that's a great way to get it, you know.
I think they
No
will.
one
They're
knows that.
looking for news.
Yeah, that's what we,
Sandy Fox.
That's good. Fake news.
that's what we find. If you give them that press release, they'll probably run it, because a lot of the local papers, I'm not saying anything about yours, we find are, you know, they don't have a large staff, so they're very happy to receive things that, you know, from the town.
And I think it's smart to say 5 to 10 minutes, because when I see surveys come up, I look at that, I'm like, do I have time? You know, if it's
Mhm.
5 minutes, 6 minutes, sure, you know, I'll take that time. But if it's like 15,
Yeah,
you know, forget it, I
Yeah,
don't.
5 to 10 minutes, you don't wanna say anything more than 10 minutes.
No,
Yeah.
that's right, and that's
So
why
make
we
it
tried to
9.
limit the questions. We did
Yeah.
just, discuss that, so we could say that.
Yeah, I think it's in
Take,
the,
take 5,
I believe it's in
yeah.
If you have some kind of flyer or anything promoting the survey, if you
Yeah.
can
We'll
send
do a
it, as
flyer.
soon as
Yeah.
you get it to me, I
Yeah.
can get it to Spotlight and
Yeah,
start
probably.
blasting it out.
I could probably try to get it to you tomorrow, knowing that you're gonna be out next week.
No rush,
If you
right?
want it, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, and that's the survey, and then, we've got a third item here is just now discussion
But I don't
with
wanna
you.
take your teeth.
Yeah, sort of a discussion with you on the land use and zoning a little bit. Scott, you had raised this to us, the MC district, and then the housing chapter, and the community facilities chapter. So,
Yeah, so Scott, do you wanna explain, what your question was about the MC district and
Well,
ask?
It's really more about, I've mentioned before that, you know, issues have come before the planning commission pertaining to the lakes. And then, you know, we're, you know, as part of planning, we then refer to the existing POCD to make a determination as to what to do. And when some issues have come before us before, there was not much guidance in the existing document to help us. And so, that's why I've wanted to make sure that this new one addresses some of those areas, at least enough so that we can find some form of guidance within it. So, and that's why I brought this up with, here, we don't have a specific area, you know, a chapter that says lake, right?
Well,
So
hopefully
is
in the
this?
natural resources section, we will.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
even then, that may not answer some of the issues or issues that have popped up or could pop up, you know? And so that's why I'm raising that point. Is this an area where something like that would be addressed? Or in more, a general sense, perhaps somewhere else, but at least in a way that might actually have some information or some sense of direction or vision that the town may
Yeah,
have.
intent.
Yes.
I think in that,
Because we've run into problems with
Mhm.
that very thing.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
we've had zoning applications come in front of us to want to change a zone or something. And from coming from the old POCD and even our own zoning meetings, the intent of the MC was to capture what's there
right,
and encapsulate it and not make it grow, because that's all residential other than those businesses there. And some applicants come in to expand that MC zone. And we tried go back to the planning conservation. Of course, it goes to the planning anyway for referral.
Right.
But the idea is that, you know, we want to have that intent so they can speak to it back to zoning and we can address it
Yeah.
based on their referral.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what we have to agree is what was the intent of the MC zone? My understanding was it was to capture what grew up on the lake there, those marinas and a few of the commercial properties. And then that it should never grow because it's very residential around it and residential should stay residential right up to the edge of that, any of the MC zones.
Right.
I took a quick look at New Fairfield and New Milford and Danbury just to see, oh, you know, what do they do for that? You know, I wasn't as familiar with it. And I didn't see a similar, I mean, I think New Milford has a business, lake business or something like that. But the other two did not have something that at least, you know, at first glance was the equivalent of that. So it looks to me like they manage it in a different manner or, I don't know the background of it.
Well, we
So-
can reflect that, this is an important discussion, because I think, as Emily said, I do think the stage gets set. The lakes will be in under open space, natural resource, a big natural resource, so to be, I think, logical in chapter 8, which we haven't written yet, this is a good discussion to have, because we're gonna start writing it
Yeah.
now, and then, but reflected, it'll be reflected then in chapter 10, the future land use plan, because we won't show any, you know, if that's, first we'll have it in 8, we'll set the stage for things, and if people tend to, you know, if we get positive feedback, actually, the planning commission eventually makes the final decision on this, but you, the committee, will make the decisions, and what I'm saying is in chapter 10, we will have a future land use map, and on that map, we can make it clear that there's, and then in the write-up, that there's no expansion foreseen of these zones, of these MC zones. And that's where it would be in the
So-
future land use plan and implementation.
Actually, when we talked about this, we were thinking about also some of the recommendations we included in the land use and zoning chapter that we shared with you. We were thinking a lot of them had to do with economic development. So we were thinking of moving those recommendations into the economic development chapter later, and then having the intro land use chapter being really just existing conditions. Because at the end, in that chapter 10 that Frank was talking about, we'll have that land use map, and we'll also have an implementation matrix, which is similar to what you have in your current plan, where you say who's responsible for what. That will all be one table at the end, and so it would incorporate, and it will identify which are zoning recommendations, so that those are easy to find.
Yeah, and so I think, but on this one, the MC zone, logical place is chapter 8 to set
Oh.
the stage.
We said to put it.
And then describe that zone in land use and zoning chapter, but then describe the lakes and so on as a natural resource in chapter 8. And then the final chapter, which is chapter 10, which is the future land use map and zoning, is to make it clear in that chapter that, and you know, maybe a paragraph dealing with the MC, that we don't see any expansion in that in the future land use plan. So,
Okay. Is there an economic development consideration we should,
On the lake,
we should consider there?
I mean, I think we've indirectly talked about, you
Sorry,
know.
I put you on the spot.
No, that's right. More people, you know,
Mhm.
at one point you're saying the lake's crowded, overcrowded, you know, like, do we really wanna attract more people to the lake? I'm throwing a what if, you know, I don't,
Yes, it's-
the lake can only hold so many people, we can't build any more houses on the shores, I don't think, I mean,
No.
I mean, we have problems with sewers. I mean, it is a great attraction.
Mhm.
Do we wanna make it a bigger attraction? I don't know if I'm gonna wave that flag for economic development, I don't think that's, you know, I don't know what the right answer is, but I
Right.
don't, you know, the town, I think, is, you know, they said there's too many apartment buildings, I don't think people wanna add more business to the lake.
Right.
I think the lake attracts enough business as it is.
And I think it's fully developed as far as the MC zone go. I don't think there's any vacant lots in the MC zone.
Yeah,
And then some have been redeveloped into more intensive use as far as commercial
yeah.
versus recreational. You know, like Candlewood East, on the east side, used to be Club to Lock, used to be tennis and pool and stuff like that. So it's kinda gotten more commercial. But I don't think there's any more that, maybe Echo Bay could, revamp their place, aside from that.
I think there's, a restaurant or two there that have been a restaurant, and then they're a
Yeah.
boatyard, and, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I could
Yeah.
see
Mhm.
a restaurant coming back to where the
Redevelopment.
boatyard is, or whatever, something like that,
Yeah.
but I don't think, there's gonna have to be a chapter on that, or,
Right,
a
right.
paragraph on that.
No, that's too bad.
I think though what you're saying is important, though, that we not, when we say they shouldn't be expanded, or the zone should not be expanded, on the other hand, we don't wanna prevent people from upgrading like a new restaurant coming into an existing,
Yeah, an existing
upgrading their
zone.
buildings, making them better, that's fine, I presume. But within the existing zone, within what exists now.
In the MC zone, do they allow like heavy-duty boat repairs or anything like that, or is it strictly a sales operation?
I think Echo Bay does
Just
boat
repairs.
repairs. I mean, it's
They do,
indoors.
Yeah, that's like, they do offer a lot of services, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
The one thing I've
Virtualized
noticed is the
and-
storage, the winter storage.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not just, boats in a yard, you got racking there.
Yeah.
Some of them.
To their credit, Echo Bay built something
Mhm.
over the hill
Yep.
to move some of those.
Which
boats.
is great in that we are Connecticut, you're in a boat business, you're not gonna be all year round, so that's a way to make some money
Yeah.
in the off-season, but,
No, we had a situation where I used to live where there was some boat facilities and marine facilities that were doing heavy industrial work with residential right next to them. And it was just war between the residents because of all the fiberglass work, the fumes, the overspray for paint, all kinds of things, just were not a pretty picture. And, it was all sort of built at the time, and it just seemed like it was never ending.
Yeah, I mean, there's regs, for separation, setbacks from residential to, commercial, 100 feet back, so they can't do anything in that
Right in that
buffer,
zone.
yeah. And I don't know if I've heard of people complaining, like Echo Bay and East,
I've not, yeah,
Candlewood
seen
East are the two main ones there.
Mhm.
Well,
The other one is kind of on the lake, so they're not really
Right,
next to too many neighbors.
okay. That's just a situation I ran across that was,
Yeah, but you're right, I mean,
A very
we have some
painful
issues
operation.
with commercial in that area and the neighbors that surround them, for truck and car repair. So,
yeah.
similar issue.
Is there,
Well,
I just have one
Sorry.
question about Candlewood Lake. So just out of curiosity, is there anything in the zoning regs that would allow for someone to construct like a hotel or some sort of like, not like a massive hotel, but like I know the Candlewood Inn, for example, it's called the Candlewood Inn, but I
Yeah.
don't believe they have any
I
overnight.
don't
they used to have rooms there, I don't know if it's still
I think they
working
have
in or not,
been,
but it wasn't in at one point.
It's mostly a banquet facility. I think
Yeah.
they have a room that is more for, I don't know if they allow overnight guests, but more for like brides to change in.
Was it
there.
more like
I'd
a motel,
have to
it was almost
check.
like a
I'd have-
motel or?
Yeah,
something.
right there at the entrance
Yeah.
to Candlewood Shores, and that's still there.
That's an
Well, that
apartment.
too, but I mean Candlewood Inn.
Oh, Candlewood Inn,
they
so
had.
There's like 5 or 6 little apartments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know, I never really looked, I have to look closely at the use table, but I doubt it.
It just made me think from like an economic development perspective, like theoretically, if someone wanted to come in and buy, say, old marina or something and
Mhm.
develop it and put in like a boutique hotel, like on the lake, which wouldn't necessarily create boat traffic, but it would be like a place where people could get away in the weekend, sort of like, I don't know if you've
Yeah,
been to the, what's it called, and I think like the Delamar in Fairfield, something like that, like a boutique hotel, not like a big property, but
well, we know the Delamar pretty well.
Mhm,
That's, we do some work in Fairfield. But also I was thinking of the smaller, you can control something by defining an inn as a
Mhm.
certain number of rooms. And you can control it to a small, hotel facility. It's not, it's not a Marriott. It's
Mhm.
a very small hotel. That would be a policy call by the board, I think.
yeah, we'd have to see if there's even allowed use in the MC zone. There is a little spot of MC, right near, kinda near,
Yeah, that's north, right,
just south of Candlewood Inn, which is Candlewood Inn in
This
Brooklyn?
has the zoning on it.
yes.
So that must be right
Also
about
the
here.
sewer.
I
So
don't know
someone
what
could
that
theoretically
represents.
build something like that.
But it's a tiny piece of property you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think that's where Manja Manja is.
Oh, that little
That's
strip?
Oh, I think that's-
commercial.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that-
a commercial.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
that's
commercial.
north of Manja, because I think.
Yeah,
Manja
so
is
that's
south.
all
That's not even,
residential.
that's not really, I
That's
wouldn't
all
count that on the lake,
residential.
that's on Kendall Cliff
So
Road.
you couldn't put something like that.
I see.
But
Okay.
say you
ago.
took down the hatch and decided to upgrade it to a boutique hotel, that's certainly possible. I mean, it's already got 2 stories and stuff.
Wasn't there a small, there was a little place that I think, I don't know how many units it was, if you're going up Candlewood, going up to the shores, right before there, on the left-hand side, there
Yeah.
used
Yeah,
to be.
like
a-
apartments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grandfathered in.
Yes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something that you want to explore a little bit, or
I think it might be worth exploring.
What were you saying? Sorry.
a small inn, whether as a land use, a use in the MC district, a small inn? I mean, it could be controlled, the size of it would have to be
Something we want to
controlled.
encourage with the POCD, is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, that, I
Okay.
think the question Mark's raising is, is an inn something that, I guess you were raising, does it exist now, and is it a good idea to allow? That's up to you.
I don't know, I think if someone has sees that as an opportunity,
Zoning
it'd be up to them.
regulations,
I
do you
mean,
wanna
is it-
find out
do we
if
wanna
the use is
make a
permitted?
I
recommendation?
do, I'm like, I don't have them with me for a
It
change.
would
Here's an
require
opportunity.
obviously a developer to
Yeah.
want that, but.
The access to the lake though, from Kenwood Shores, when you go up there, where I remember the hotel being, it never was really very popular. And I've lived here for 60 years, so.
Well, there's no water view from that
Yeah,
place.
right, no,
Yeah.
no.
So anything on the water
So
there.
it was very rarely used.
Yeah, I mean, the
It's
only
all
way I think that
residential.
something you're talking about would be feasible, to make it a boutique or whatever you wanna call it, would have to
Yeah.
be on the water, it'd have to have a view of the
Yeah, of
water.
course.
Because if it didn't have a view of the
Yeah.
water, I don't
They
think
do allow
somebody wants to come and stay on
hotels.
Candlewood Lake Road and watch the
Site
cars.
plan.
that-
No.
Yeah, no,
Right,
of course,
right.
I'm
Or the
thinking though,
winter.
like, if an
Right.
existing, say, an existing, property owner that owns a marina or owns, say, even the Candlewood Inn theoretically, it's
commercial.
something, or
And all
down the
commercial
hatch
and
even, like, if
industrial
they
zones.
wanted to do something like that in the future.
It turns out it is
would-
available.
It is an allowed
Okay.
use, so if I
Special
s-
permit.
Special permit, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
So,
okay.
But with the
I would
space
say
being
down the
available.
hatch down the hatch looks like the only place on the water that's in the MC
Feel
zone.
free to grab it.
okay.
Everything else.
But would there be enough property to put
Well, I guess
something there?
Kenwood East.
I don't know.
It would actually be a public hearing process,
Yeah,
so for something
right.
like that, there would be
Yeah.
public hearings on it
Mhm.
as it stands currently.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I
So
thought.
it would be-
But
Yeah.
I don't think we're saying it's something we either want to encourage
Yeah,
or
thank you.
just discourage, right?
Yeah,
We're-
maybe let it happen naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that, I was just curious if
It's
it was even
available.
allowed, like, if the
Yeah.
town was discouraging it, that would be
Mhm.
different, but like, if the town's just sort of neutral on that, it's something that I don't think we need to really go further into.
Yeah, and in this case, it would be replacing something that's, it wouldn't be expanding the zone.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Well, our next agenda item, we had sent to you the housing chapter, and we also sent the community facilities chapter, so,
Yeah, and,
we've got some
yeah.
key points here to hand out to you, maybe, or,
Yeah, we acknowledge that you got these just before this meeting, or you're just seeing it for the first time, maybe in your packet. So we don't expect that you've read this, but there is a handout in the packet that just summarizes the issues and opportunities for each of those chapters and provides a list of goals and recommendations. So I don't know if you want me to kind of go through and summarize these, or if you prefer to just say what housing issues are on your mind and we can see if we've covered it or not.
I went through it real quickly. One thing I did see written in there was something that mentioned the White Turkey Inn in the historic
That was
district.
in the.
And I was like, I've only been here 35 years and that wasn't even around when I was here, so I don't think that existed.
I went there for lunch once.
Did you? All right,
as a
it's
kid.
been a long time, but yeah, White Turkey's no longer in
Oh,
existence.
Right.
No.
Yeah, well, we haven't
It
met
was-
with the historic commission yet, so that was one of the questions I sent to them, but I
Okay.
The
haven't
building
heard.
is still there, but it's
Yeah.
not called the
Yeah.
White
Yeah.
Turkey.
Michael's.
Where?
Where
The
Raymond
White
Flanagan
Turkey,
is?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember as a
yes,
child, we
yes,
used to
yes.
look at the swans in the pond.
Yes,
all the time.
definitely, yeah.
yeah.
There's a famous
And I-
print
I
that
think you
everybody in
can't- you
Brookfield that's been
covered-
here forever had of the White Turkey.
Right. yeah,
Candlewood
it's nice.
Lake Peninsula, some of the
Us old
issues
people
there.
have-
Gosh, I haven't heard that in a long time.
Especially the first point, which is the point Nancy Noor brings up.
Yes.
And, yeah, I mean, I looked it over too. There has been some interest in cottage-style development
Yes.
on some, in, I guess you'd call it, in this, northern Brookfield section up
And
On
which,
like along
is there a
the-
particular zone or?
Actually, someone was talking about Obtuse Rocks Road, this area here. I think that's where it was.
So it's the R 80?
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting, sorry, I missed that.
So someone had come in front of us informally in the zoning commission to ask about cottage-style, homes.
Oh,
You know, where maybe a common septic or common, you know, community water, but small cottages. And an example would be right next to the lake, there's a little, kind of collection of cottages,
right.
next to Candlewood East. Similar to
Yes,
that.
similar, yeah.
Because it's almost like a tiny home sort of thing. Where people, you know, they're just single or something like that, or maybe they're a couple, but they don't want a lot of stuff, or they can't afford a lot. And it's like a community, and so,
So would that be possible through your subdivision regulations that they are right now?
not subdivision regulations, everybody requires their own.
The
septic, right?
conservation, like if you did a conservation
Oh, conservation subdivision?
could you fit a cottage style development?
I
Theoretically,
have not looked at that.
your minimum lot size, I think in your
Is
current
20,000.
conservation subdivision is a 20,000 square foot lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, you could still develop a cottage on 20,000. but-
Yeah, I just want, well, I
you
guess
still need the
one of the
land.
questions
Need
would
the
be,
land.
would it be more like condo ownership? Would it be
But it's just in different
common
locations.
ownership of
They
the
still have
land
open space
with
in there.
everybody owning their own little
The
cottage?
Yeah.
conservation
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
It sounds more like a
Yeah,
multifamily.
they still have the land,
Like,
it's
right?
just
Is it
not
multi-
necessarily as part of the law.
Except everybody has their own cottage, so it's almost like camp cottages.
But it's an existing house with a, kitchen, the
So,
whole
like,
nine yards.
Oh, yeah,
You're-
I know what you
you're-
mean, what a conservation
Everybody would,
subdivision
yeah,
is.
they
Yes,
have
like,
their own little.
Age
so like part of
restricted.
this is preserved and then
I
there's
don't-
Correct.
It's
cluster
almost
here.
like the.
I
But
think
that particular
No, it's
thing you're
just an
talking about
idea.
is
Someone came up
multiple
with an
houses,
idea,
I believe, on
you
one
know,
lot.
just says,
Oh,
I
okay,
don't know.
I see. So you couldn't do a subdivision for that? That project isn't a subdivision?
But it
That
seemed
project, I think, is
interesting.
pre-existing
Or
non-conforming,
semi-detached.
so it's not
Yeah.
anything. It's
Yeah.
Oh, so it's all, there's already cottages there?
not in that particular, but near the
Oh, the
lake.
one that he gave as
Yeah.
an example, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Currently, we don't have anything, I would think, that
Yeah, we
allows
can't
it, that
do
I
that.
can think of off of
Yeah.
the subdivision regulations or in the zoning regulations. But it is an interesting concept, and it's actually been approached from an economic perspective too, believe it or not, in the TCD district, as a possibility before. But it's currently not allowed based off of the zoning regulations. And I haven't looked close enough at the subdivision regulations, but I believe we try to discourage, I mean, we do have certain communities that do have shared wells,
Mhm.
but not necessarily shared septic facilities.
Mm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's what this looks like, and that one grandfather in one probably is a shared septic.
So I-
Shared
I've never
septic?
looked
I
into
don't
it because it
wanna
is,
skip
it is what it is, it's the pre-existing non-conforming
Yeah.
fund that we
Yeah.
Yeah, we
inherit.
could, by the way, what we have, Emily's making a good suggestion. We have later on just a highlighted, a possibility for you to consider in the conservation. You have a current conservation subdivision.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we were thinking there, that traditionally in Connecticut has been meant to simply give the commissions the power to allow the same number of units, but reduce the lot size. And in your case, someone who wrote the zoning, your original zoning, chose a 20,000 square foot lot size. So say you have, just to make life simple, you're in an R40 zone and you got 100 acre, I'm just making my math simple for me. You got 100 acres and your R40 zone, so that's 1 acre zoning. So you probably could get, you gotta deduct for roads and, so I'm just saying you probably could get 100 acres, 1 acre zoning, maybe 80 homes.
Yeah, you have to set aside some
Yeah,
land.
you gotta set aside some land.
Yeah.
We have
So,
one, Meadowbrook Manor,
Yeah.
or we have more than one?
Yeah.
we
So
have-
there's, say, 100 acres, you're gonna use up, say, 80 acres or so.
Mhm.
A conservation subdivision says you can have the same 80 units, but zoning, I guess it would either be planning or zoning. Planning could accept development which had, instead of 1 acre lot, 40,000 square foot lots,
Yeah.
20,000 square foot lots.
Yeah, with,
Now you get the 80 units, but they're on half the land area. And so the other land area can be devoted to open space.
Yeah.
And that is why it's called the conservation
Yeah.
subdivision. You're conserving open space. And now, also, our understanding from just reading about this is, if you're a developer, you're not always looking at, it's a great developer, let's put it this way, who says to himself, gee, I could build the same 80 houses, same 80 houses, but they'll all have half the land area. And the rest I can, devote to those residents as open space, or I can give some to the town in the land conservation. And that sounds wonderful, except for one thing. The developer also knows that he's not gonna get as much profit, he's not gonna get as much of a sales value out of a half-acre lot as he is out of an acre lot, because people can tell the difference.
Yeah.
And
But they'll save on road costs.
they'll save on, by the way, they will save on road costs, and they might save also on other costs, because they've got a more compact development, so that does save on road costs. And it may save them if they're doing a conservation subdivision where it's, single-family houses grouped together. It can save on money for, for different maintenance
Yeah.
issues.
And I
So,
would hope it would mean they're cheaper too.
yeah, but what we were thinking
I
of,
lived in one.
what we were thinking of in that area is two things. If I remember our discussion correctly,
here
it's
on-
probably here. And that is, one thing is to give you, I guess, the planning commission, the power, this has to be approved by your town attorney, the power to mandate the conservation subdivision. I believe that there's not a danger of a taking there. He still gets the same 80 homes as he's entitled to under under a subdivision, standard subdivision. They might not make as much money on the deal, but no one said we had to increase profits or, that type of thing. So if it would pass muster with by the way, I've seen other communities, whole other states do this. Your joining state of New York. All of the planning commissions in New York have the power to mandate a conservation subdivision. So the reason I say that and raise it is, apparently you haven't had any applications under this.
We have.
You have had a few?
We have, I
That's
wish I had the
good.
list
You were
in front of
looking
me.
at the
Yeah, but
We do have a list of conservation subdivisions. It wasn't, there's not a whole lot of them,
Yeah.
but they do exist in Brookfield. The only question I bring up is, do we have even a large enough tract of land that's undeveloped at this point that subdivisions have very much slowed down. Most of the time when we're
Yes,
getting
I know.
subs, we're
This
getting
may not be a big
re-subs.
issue, yeah. But I've seen conservation subdivisions being done on 5 and 6 units.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just cluster
And
them
there's some
together.
large, according to this land use map, there's some large areas that might be.
Yeah, some tracks near the
There are some-
outer edges.
Or I saw, even you see in the housing chapter, there's some big area of land for sale. I don't know what, I didn't look exactly on the map where those were, but there were some several acre properties that could get many units.
Yeah.
But
So that's one
Yeah.
item that you could consider, because you would probably get more. In other words, anyone coming in from a subdivision, once you have that power, planning commission could always look at that. And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not
we have,
saying,
we have zoning regs related to conservation
Subdivisions.
subdivisions, but are there also corresponding planning regs?
so the
I don't
know.
latest
Yeah, I
know.
subdivision
I'm down.
document I found was from 2007,
It-
right? Is there an
yes.
updated one?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
The subdivision regulations were something that was on my list for needing to be revisited, because they haven't been in a while.
Yeah.
Just going to wait until the merger before I touch that one.
yeah.
You
It's
even
just one
brought
thing
it up.
to mention to you, because it keeps all the requirements of height and area and bulk, except for the lot size, and it creates open space.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be down to, you know, let's say an application comes before you, we've been through this a lot on subdivision review. An application comes before you and, let's say it's the R40 zone again, but the applicant says, gee, if I could do just a little bit, 3/4 of an acre lots, I could save all this vegetation, you know, some tree stands, in addition to some wetlands on the site. In other words, you might go to 3/4.
A few pages off.
We're just giving the planning commission the ability to talk to any applicant that comes in for a future subdivision where you have clout. They know that you would have the power to mandate something, and then therefore they might work with you as to, hey, what's the proper lot size here? Most people can't tell what we found in our own experience. People can tell the difference between a half acre and an acre. They can tell that, it's visual. So the real estate agents are not as, they're worried about that type of change. The difference between 3/4 of an acre, let's say 35,000 square feet and 40, people can't tell the difference effectively. So the developer's not too affected in his real estate costs. But at 30 or 35,000 an acre, those septics still work just fine, and you would get more open space in the town over time, particularly if they're going to listen to you once they know you have the power to mandate something. So I just thought it's a good thing to check, maybe get in the plan if we can, but it would have to be, your town attorney has to, you know, it should be reviewed by him.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, the other idea is, to just carry this to another extent, is we consider, and most planners consider, single-family homes to be single-family homes detached. That's the normal single-family home. Everybody thinks about a single-family home, you're on your own lot. Or single-family homes that are attached, otherwise known as townhouses. They have their own lot, they have their front yard, they have their backyard. But they're townhouse units, but they're still single-family. They're single-family attached units.
Is that in Newtown?
Yeah, some towns will consider that in a cluster subdivision. Now, if you allow that,
Which we don't have.
you are saving a tremendous amount of land for open space. However, people sometimes see a townhouse, oh my God, you're allowing multifamily housing in a single-family community. But they are single-family homes, they're attached, and they would have their own lot.
In residential zoning districts.
Yeah.
In
They would have-
single family.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen
But in a
some,
conservation
I've seen-
subdivision,
there's
it says
ton of them
minimum
in
lot
Newtown.
size 20,000, so would you be
Yeah.
able to do a townhouse?
oh,
Was
well,
the-
the
it's a good
setbacks have
question.
to add up to 45 feet, 15,
I was just gonna say.
less than 15 on one side,
Yeah,
so.
you couldn't do it, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Under your
we'd have to-
current
we'd have
code,
to
you
allow
cannot do a
that.
townhome. We would need to, by the way, we don't have to do anything in zoning, but we would have to, if you wanted to entertain that, we should put that type of concept in the plan.
Yeah, and I guess those are good questions in the survey about types of homes.
Yeah, types of homes.
Residential.
You know, it's like they have semi-detached where you have two single-family homes sharing one wall
Yeah,
on one or two lots, I suppose.
Multifamily
There's an
residential.
example of that on Route 67 going down to Southbury. And it, you know, it looks like a regular single-family residence subdivision, except there, you know, there's, everything shares one wall.
you got two single-family homes.
They're like ranches, or maybe,
That's
you
right.
know, it's
They
like
got two
modern
single-
ranch.
I've seen
but
that a
one wall,
lot,
yeah.
and what I've seen also is 3 done, where you've got 2 on the ends, parked differently on the sides, 1 in the middle,
It's nice.
So is
and
that a single family
they are-
attached or duplex?
they are, no, these are always single-family attached units.
Mhm.
Because as soon as you change out of the single-family mode in a single-family zone, you can expect opposition at that hearing. But I've seen it very carefully done in other communities where it is described accurately, these are 3 single-family homes, and instead of
Three
putting them,
separate lots.
they're on 3 separate lots.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is the type
The
of
0
home,
foot site.
this is the type of home, a townhome, particularly what we've seen sell to empty nesters, 2.5, sort of 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and a den. In other words, a lot of storage. These are aimed, there's a whole market for this right now, and it's gonna continue for a while, because the baby boom is still retiring, and you got a demand for that type of housing. They're townhomes, they're single-family attached townhomes. There may be only 2 of them together, or 3. And that is a very attractive model. We've seen it as a,
Another town does it.
yeah, we've seen it sell very, very well. So but it does mean that your current code, which has a 20,000 square foot minimum, has to allow that to happen. But you still require that townhome have its own lot, its own front yard and its own backyard. But you have to, adjust the lot size.
And it's not like we don't have 0 side setbacks. We do in the TCD.
Oh, you do?
When you have buildings butted up, it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, it's a 0 lot line. They're also called 0 lot line,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Isn't that what if you go up West Wisconsin, if you turn left to go down, what's that weight?
Wisconsin Village?
Yeah, isn't that similar? Or-
Yeah, there's attached single-family units in Wisconsin Village.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
thank you,
Yeah.
I couldn't think of it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a nice
So
model.
they're grandfathered in, but we don't allow now, but it's something maybe,
If you wanted to consider
to
it, I
bring it
mean,
up.
Yeah,
it attracts 2 groups, particularly the empty nester. They're looking, let's say that their kids have gone to college or whatever, they're going. There's an empty nest there and their single family home they're sitting on, and they're saying, why am I paying all these bills to maintain it? The townhome gives them a step down without being uncomfortable. In other words, they're stepping not from a single family home to a multifamily apartment on Federal Road. They're stepping into a townhome that has the extra bedroom in case one of the children want to come home for a weekend or something, and it gives them an extra storage space. It's very hard, I think, for some people to, move down with everything. So they have the room for it. We've seen these being built at, 2,000 square feet anyway. So they're moving from, say, a 2,800 square foot house. The average house in America is about 2,600 square feet, down to 1,800 to 2,000. That's comfortable for them. And they can reduce their costs. The other market is the younger person who just can't quite afford that single-family home, or they don't intend to have a family, or they don't intend to have one child or whatever. So that's attractive to them, and so there's a market out there for it, but it's a matter of, and what we found is, as long as these are truly kept as single family in the single family zones, they're another form of housing that's less expensive than your standard subdivision house. So it's I don't want to say it's a naturally occurring, I hate acronyms, but I just happen to hear this from a noted attorney in our field. Naturally occurring affordable housing, not regulated, it's not, you're just providing a mix of housing types.
Diversity.
It's diversity of housing, you're just providing it. You've got it in town already, as you say, but if you keep things non-conforming, you're not gonna see others of that nature. And it's a way to introduce a new form of housing, for which our experience has been, there's a significant market for it. There's in other communities selling well. In my own community where I live, several people have told me, my relatives, my neighbors, they would buy these if they were available. And then for younger, I have some nieces and nephews looking for homes. Actually, my son is one. He owns a condo right now. It's a condominium within a multifamily complex. It's just two stories high. But he's looking to buy something that will be just a little bigger. And townhomes, where he's looking, I said, you gotta look north, and Westchester County are just out of sight. And so, but they're still less than a single-family home, generally. There's some exceptions to that, depending on where you are. So it might be something you might wanna look at. The first one, I think if your town attorney says yes, you would be able to preserve a lot more open space in a lot of your subdivisions. And I think the developers, as long as the difference isn't too great for them, they're probably gonna go along with it, because the difference between a 3/4 acre lot and an acre lot is not that great. And, you could get more open space in that subdivision. Anyway, just a thought, I didn't mean to take too much time on that, but we thought it's worth mentioning, But let's go on to the other things here.
Does anyone have any other comments for housing, or do we wanna move to community facilities? I mean, of course, you have time to review this and to send your comments and, but is there anything you wanna?
I don't know, did everybody get a chance to digest all this information
I just scanned it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we wanna,
Yeah.
come back?
Yeah, come back to it. By the way, I should mention
Because I
something.
know it's an important topic.
Yeah, and maybe coming back to this, one thing we're thinking of, this is again up to you. We've done I think fairly, thorough, well, we tried to be fairly thorough on affordable housing. But also in our contract, at some point, it may be after this POCD is done, it may be by planning commission, we've got a requirement to update your existing affordable housing plan. So there are some things in the housing section on affordable housing we can discuss later. We can, as you read it, think about, should that go on the affordable housing plan or should it stay here? I think if it does, some things go on the affordable housing plan, we should reference in the housing chapter in the plan. Just reference it. And, because that's.
Hyperlink.
For clarification, I thought we were gonna hopefully have the affordable housing plan within the POCD or not. I mean, I know you were concerned about getting just the POCD done.
Yeah, that's objective one, yes.
Yes, objective one, but
Mhm.
I'm strongly in favor of getting the affordable housing plan in the POCD if we can. I mean, I know with the timetable, it comes in a little bit later after some of the chapters, but I think it's very important to the town, if we can.
We can do either. I mean, the way we're set up now, Thomas Madden is working on, we've got a lot of data on the affordable housing. I think that the affordable housing, though, the way it's set up here in the state, it implies that there needs to be a separate
A
plan.
separate, okay.
The state,
Yeah, they said,
Yeah.
Every 5 years,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
because it is also time.
Yeah, it's actually due in
This
And-
this public act,
Correct.
so we
Yeah.
can't have it in the appeals.
But they're under contract.
you've gotta
with the
have a
affordable
separate,
housing.
Yes.
right, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Pardon?
I'm saying the,
Yeah, you could, but I don't think, I think
wouldn't
if I'm
recommend
listening to Scott, we don't, let me paraphrase
Sure.
something I've heard from Scott. We want to finish the POCD, and we don't want to have it distracted by or
Yep.
delayed
Yeah,
by
I
the
don't want to.
affordable housing
Yeah,
plan.
negatively impact.
No, and
Right.
it's running its own course on a separate
Yeah.
track, so that's fine,
Right.
that's fine.
So, state law does, as Emily's pointing out, state law does allow it to be in the POCD, but I think you've got a separate one already, an affordable housing plan. I think it's better to keep it separate. But one thing we had thought of doing, that we mentioned to you, I don't know, 3 meetings ago, when Thomas was here, is to have a table on housing at the workshop, the second workshop. Just have a table on housing, which Thomas might be there and he could talk about affordable housing. Because the affordable housing plan does require that you have public outreach on the plan. And we thought, hey, gee, the second public workshop, if you wanted, we could have a housing table that could address also
I
affordable
think
housing.
that's where you'll get some residents of Brookfield, who will let you know what they feel
Yeah,
about affordable housing and
yeah.
housing in general.
But we would keep it housing in general and also affordable housing ideas.
And when I mention affordable, I guess I'm talking about multifamilies.
or
Yeah.
That's where some people are.
multifamilies or 830G, because
Yeah.
affordable is
Well, we
something
don't have a whole lot of
entirely
either,
else.
but
Yeah.
I'm just talking about multifamilies in general, that's why we have the moratorium now.
Yeah.
and,
Yes,
On
that's
both.
right. So, and normally the affordable housing plans that I've seen done would have their own, it could be this committee, but could also have their own, it could either be the planning commission itself, or
And that's
some
my
type-
concern is,
Yeah.
resources, we're already asking a lot from you guys
No,
already.
I hear- I know.
And,
yeah.
we wanna make sure we devote I'd love to get both done, I mean, that'd be
But the other one's
great,
not
but-
due till 27, so that
Right.
gives us 2 years.
Right, right.
So-
Yeah, so, again, up to you, we need, if it gets, if it gets delayed, I just would need, this is why I'm,
Yeah,
first selectman, I gotta tell them, if it gets delayed or we want it delayed, that's fine with us. By the way, we're open to both procedures, so we don't bring to this any, but I would need a little contract amendment, because
It is
our contract
contracted.
currently says we gotta be finished this year.
Yeah.
So if we want to delay the affordable housing plan, which is okay with us, we've got a lot of research done on it, but I just.
I know that we're
Yeah.
running, they run parallel,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
to a certain point, right?
Right.
And that's where I wanna find out, is where is that point where we've really gotta make that decision that we've gotta do both? I think we're coming.
Yeah, you're
getting
coming to
there,
it, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I've always felt if we're at 80% there, and it's gonna take
Yeah.
little effort to,
Another-
it doesn't,
Yeah.
put any risk on the POCD, sure, why not address it,
That's why I had the idea of just
But
in the
I wanna
second
make sure,
workshop, have a
yeah.
table on housing, because then we could say, hey,
This is your public outreach.
this was part of your public outreach, you got it. You got it. And it saves a little money, and it's more efficient, and, that way then, but I wanna be clear that I think I would like to do what Scott has been hinting at, I think, and that is, the POCD will have its own public hearing on the POCD, period.
Yeah,
And then-
I think we do
right.
need that, I think.
And then the
there's two
affordable
things that
housing
need to be
plan.
Separately
I
addressed.
Yeah.
absolutely agree with that.
And we can get the affordable housing plan done whenever you want, because Thomas is, this is not like the POCD, this is like a 30-page report, it's not and so it's something that we can do, but to have a separate public hearing, separate after the POCD, so it doesn't interfere with the POCD,
Mhm.
so. But we're getting at the stage where, we'd like to, make that decision, next month or two.
Yeah, and I remember when we were talking about even this POCD, one thing I know that in the future, we'd want to make sure that we check in on the POCD more than once every 10 years. We'd like to do it,
Right.
I've suggested, twice every 5 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know what, really ideally, you want to have that also for the affordable housing plan. So if we weren't so, as a planning commission, certainly, if we weren't so focused on this POCD, it would be ideal to check in on the affordable housing plan and make sure that we are on pace to whatever we propose to be.
Yeah,
With
and-
the plan way back when, so.
Yeah, okay.
So I have, obviously I have some
Yeah.
different views on it.
All right.
I'm trying to work through it.
Well, anyway, as you read through the housing, because we'll have another discussion, and we can have another discussion on the housing, but also, I'd ask, if you could send comments on the housing as you get them to Laura, that would be great, because then we're ready for the February meeting. And then, we ought to discuss a little bit the community facilities chapter, highlighted, Emily, do you wanna?
So we'll come back to the.
Come back to
housing. I
housing,
think,
yeah.
yeah, I have a feeling there'll be more discussion.
Yeah, oh, yeah. But, you wanna highlight community facilities?
I guess, is there anything that anyone wants to bring up or that stands out?
The only thing I wanted to add is at the Brookfield Municipal Center, we do have a pickleball court.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a
That was
pickleball.
yes, it's
That's our
slated to
latest
open in
upgrade.
spring, then it's our latest upgrade, so. That was the first thing I noticed.
So I guess I could just kind of review it, and if you feel free to interrupt me. So I guess I'll go from, I'm gonna just skip over to goals and recommendations. They kind of correspond with the issues and opportunities list. Those are things that we found from speaking to people and reviewing other documents like that emergency services report.
So page 7?
Yeah, so page 7, of the,
Goals.
attachment page 7, 10.
4.5.
Yes, 4. Sorry.
Oh, is it 4.5? That's not-
No, something happened with the
Oh,
But
okay.
beyond that,
Well,
number,
yeah.
the numbering, I guess,
Okay.
when it was extracted from the
so we could
chapter.
go I got page into the community incorporation.
There's two packages,
Can I go
it's 7
too
of
far?
10, where she's talking about this.
Oh, you're right there. Oh, I see. Yeah,
Look
that's
up
what
at
I
the
did.
package.
Oh, there we
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
7 of 10, there we are.
7 of 10.
Gotcha.
7 of 10.
Okay, so the numbers in your copy of the chapter should be correct, but, so the first one is about facilities, and some of the things that we heard regarding facilities is number one, priority, it seems like, for the town is the police station, but, feel free to, say otherwise. The current police station is undersized, for the staff that they have, and, they've had to make, Band-Aid repairs to meet code, and, so they are really pressed for, having a new station or, enlarging the current station. Planning for the future use of center school, is another huge, priority that we've heard about. The town owns it. People are hoping that this, or right now there's a committee looking at whether like a library, indoor parks and recreation facilities and multi-purpose rooms, like a community center could be, put in there. Some of the issues or challenges that they're having is that the, electricity and water have been turned off, and so that building is,
It's in
vacant
bad
and declining, yes.
Mhm.
So,
It's
there
in
need,
bad shape.
their next step is to do a feasibility, study for that, and they wanna do public outreach to understand what those, needs are there. The current library property, so if the library were to move to center school, what would happen with your current library property that's way down the line, probably towards the end of the POCD, or maybe your next POCD, what you do with that property. Assessing the feasibility of renovating, expanding, or, relocating the BVFC Center Fire Station, so that's the fire station that's in, at Brookfield Center. That one is where the EMS, ambulances are, and EMS, staff and, volunteers have living quarters there, and, the department and also the emergency services study found that that facility is in pretty bad shape. And I'll note that that's not owned by the town, that is owned by the, volunteer fire company. So they would need to talk to the town about what they're, thinking about there, and as far as we know, the capital planning committee hadn't really heard about this yet, so I think it's also something that's a little further down the line. So.
But in reading some of the things in the packet, it sounded like for the ambulance, I'll call it the ambulance center,
Mhm.
the EMT center, that sounded like that's maybe more, I mean, the police is a priority.
Mhm.
And if you're a librarian, the library is a priority. But if we need an ambulance or an EMT call, that might be a bigger priority, the way I read it. You know, they don't have facilities to sleep and everything else, and.
Yeah, so I think they do have facilities to sleep. I think they just don't meet some of the, codes, and the building wasn't originally designed for that. They do have, right now they have enough bay for their ambulances, but they have acquired another one that's coming in 2026 that won't have a bay when it comes in. So there are some things like that, but it sounds like there hasn't been like a committee that's been organized or anything to actually look at what, it seems like they had done some analysis. They own a lot next door to the department as well, that they had looked at ways that they could expand and stuff. So it's something that needs to be looked at and what that would cost, and yeah.
It just seems like I'm gonna just throw out a $4 or $5 million project as opposed to a $25 or $30 million project for a library or a new police department.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what you would do there. If you add one bay,
Right.
or you tear it down and build it. They also noted in the emergency services study, I mean, I don't know if this really applies, but they noted that that station is very close to the other station, and that maybe from a coverage standpoint, it might make sense to consider elsewhere, but I don't know where else in the town. So there's some things to think about there.
Yeah. And this, we're aware that, you know, this is not each of these individual things. We got a sense that, for instance, with this one on the center school, there's gonna be a whole committee looking at that. So that committee's gonna go on well beyond the POCD. But we did have a very good sort of eye-opening meeting with the gentleman who's the finance guy that showed us these charts.
That was a capital planning.
Capital Planning Commission. And we're meeting with the first selectman, as I mentioned, Wednesday, and some other financial officer. And what he showed us was, and we should bring these we should show these charts to you. He showed us the charts of the debt that the town has and carries. And he said where you'll see the spike in debt was for the elementary school. It was a big expense, one that town decided to make, and that's great. But he said the debt actually over time will start to decrease. It's a bond issue, start to decrease. He said, but now if you try to do the police department, the fire department, this center school, they can't all be done at the same time, or you're gonna suddenly spike the debt again, and that will have an impact, direct impact on the taxpayers. So he said, I'm not choosing between these. He said, we just need to phase them in some way. That's gonna be a decision of kind of others, but I think what the POCD can do is list out what these needs are, but I think we're gonna have to, we should probably say that the town's gonna have to decide on these in terms of the future decisions. What came out first for us, it just seemed to be, you seem to have a lot more information on the police department. And I got a sense of this.
Well, no, not on the police department, on fire.
On fire and police, but police we seem to have, on this center school plan, it seemed to me to be, I cannot determine that the committees,
There isn't
do
yet.
now.
the committee is not
You see
even,
when you walk in, the
seemed not to
board,
be formed.
that's, they have a board.
I think there's a second committee.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So in other
We're
words,
just waiting now. See if we have it.
I think the selectmen eventually have to choose, what are they going to do? They can't do everything at once, is the message we're getting from
I think the
these.
majority of the town knows that too. I mean, anybody who's involved, anybody who, follows this or anything in town.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
realize, there's a couple of 4 or 5 big ticket items,
Right,
but we can't do them all.
Which
You
one
can't
comes
do them all.
first?
and they have to
So we
be,
should also,
so,
I
yeah.
wanna check in again with the fire,
Yeah.
because they are their own company, and while
Yeah.
they do work with the town on budget, the volunteer fire company, as opposed to the volunteer fire department, does bring in
Yeah.
a good amount of,
Yeah.
revenue from, emergency response calls
Yeah.
and some other stuff.
But you can't do all of these, and it seemed to me the one that I was getting a sense of that's not clear yet is this whole center school property. There doesn't even, there's a committee, but it doesn't seem pressing who was on it and was being
It just
formed.
started.
It just
Just
started.
started.
Just
Just
very
started.
recently.
So
Yeah.
this is not gonna
Just
be,
announced,
yeah, it's not gonna be something where POCD, we should have it done in November. The committee will hardly be getting underway and focusing on the center school, so that's clearly not gonna be something we're gonna be able to, maybe have solid costs on or that type of thing. So, in the future, the selectmen will eventually have to make some hard decisions between what are they gonna fund in terms of a bond issue, and how does that affect debt? And how it affects debt will affect the taxpayer or not. In other words, what this finance person was saying was, you can afford another capital expenditure because the debt for the elementary school is starting to go down, and the bond issue will peak, say, the police department, or if it's a fire facility. So, but to do everything at once, that debt peak will start to, could affect your bond rating. And also, these have to go to the taxpayer. So the taxpayer, that's the first thing they're gonna wanna know, is our tax is gonna go up. So that's not a comp plan issue as such, but I think we need to at least make the reader of the comp plan aware of, hey, this is, you can't do everything at once. And I think that's kinda common sense, would be obvious to people reading it. But they ought to be assured that you can't, you
We're not
wanna do
forgetting
one,
about
yeah,
it.
you not forget about the cost of these things.
This is also a 10-year document, too.
This is a 10-year document, yeah.
So it's
So,
not get everything done tomorrow.
yeah, you won't get everything done tomorrow, yeah. So, but that's, go ahead
Yeah,
on
so,
that.
I mean, The other places we talked to, we just put them in here to acknowledge that they have some capital needs potentially in their community facilities as well. From what we gathered from the school, they're in pretty good shape right now. The senior center, there were a few complaints about that building, but it didn't seem like anything like dire. But we have those in here just to make sure that they are accounted for if those come up in the future. The other fire facilities, again, that emergency services report that was done in 2023, it does a full facilities study of those, so it includes photos and it looks at the OSHA and the National Fire Protection Agency. That might not be the right words for the acronym, but they make regulations on how those, or they make standards for how those facilities should be, so it identifies where they haven't been met. The next one is about parks and recreation facilities to meet the needs of all age groups. So we talked about having some kind of town-wide parks master plan that could help the capital planning committee kind of prioritize upgrades to things like playing fields, etc. They had given their kind of like line item list of, yes, do you have a comment?
I have sort of more of a question.
Yeah.
Is there a state standard or requirement for sort of population-based acreage of parks or
Yeah.
size of libraries that
Yeah.
Size
should
of
be
libraries
should be
definitely.
aspired to?
We've learned something though on these standards.
Should have asked that question.
Yeah, there's a national,
Recommendations.
there's a national park standard, and as soon as we got, this is, for me, 20, 30 years ago, dealing with some of the standards, and I learned quickly that I was in a town, I forget which town I was with, but you apply the standard in this town, where we're adjacent to 2 state parks, and this was in New York State, and also the largest county park in Westchester County. So if you applied those standards, you're totally irrelevant to this town. The town happened to be Lewisboro. And beautiful town, word pound reservation in it. But for town parks, they need hardly anything. And so applying the standards, a national standard, you gotta be very careful. They really, I find them, they're not being published anymore by the National Park Service, as far as I know, because of those discrepancies. Now, libraries are a little
Yes.
bit easier.
Yeah.
They have standards
Yeah.
and, you know, that type of
Yeah,
thing.
in the community facilities chapter, we did cite the document that was shared to us by the library director that they established standards for how large the library should be based on population, and Brookfield's library has been undersized since the 2002 POCD, so it's about a third of the size that it should be.
Right.
And
That's a lot.
also, since the library serves a lot more than just being book lending or something like that, it's like really a community center.
Right.
So it has a good argument there.
No, I just didn't know if there were standards that,
Yeah.
that should be addressed in the POCD for future
Yeah,
development.
I would
based
tend
on-
to state that
Yeah.
one, as Emily said,
Yeah.
libraries, but not parks.
Yeah, and
I just use my own hometown again, it's Madison, Connecticut. Somebody looks at Madison, just look at town parks. Actually, we look pretty good on town parks too, but we got Hammonasset State Park. I mean, we've got Hammonasset Beach, it's huge. So we've got huge other things. And if you just look at parks as town parks, we come out okay. But you look at all park resources, we come out tremendously well. So you gotta be careful on anything on park
yeah,
standards.
and also here you have a lot of people have their own yard or things like that. Like a lot of these standards are built for like cities that, you know, people need to be able to walk to a park. So a lot of the metrics are about how far it is to walk to the parks, which wouldn't really apply here if you don't have sidewalks in the more like rural residential neighborhoods.
So it's a can of worms. So
Yeah.
I don't know which one.
That one is libraries,
It's all right.
libraries are clear, yeah. So,
What is the monitor complaints about the senior center?
So that, when we spoke to the director of the Human Services Department, so this is something I kind of wanted to ask more when we meet with selectmen and others. She said that there were some issues with heating and cooling in that building, and also some issues with the flooring. And it is a more recently built building, so we wanted to kind of verify that with others before we we haven't been in that building, we haven't looked at any kind of facility report, we haven't heard anything about it from the capital planning committee, so we just wanted to kind of hear more if there are issues with that building.
Space-wise too, the senior center, there's so many seniors living in Brookfield now that they're really
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
in there.
Normally.
We did hear about the
Yeah.
parking lot issues too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't hear that the indoor spaces were.
Yeah, it's getting, it's getting more and more used, so.
Normally, just, I've mentioned this to the committee before.
Well, the parking, they can park in the
I'm sorry.
parking lot, it has to be town hall, but they want parking, and I don't think it's gonna be feasible to have parking right where the senior center is.
Yeah.
So they have to park, and I think that's what they're complaining about, cause they have to walk, they park at the end of our town hall parking lot, and they gotta walk over. But I keep on telling them it's exercise.
I think we heard there was
It's
some
a good
competition
exercise
for
for
the
them.
accessible
Huh?
spaces.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but normally, as I mentioned to the committee before, we don't get into the details
I know.
of how you're running something.
Mm-hmm.
What we wanna know from a land use perspective is like the police department. You're gonna build a new police department, where is it going? Does it need property? Well, I presume it's going here in the town campus, so it doesn't need separate property. But we don't get into whether there's linoleum on the floors or hardwood
No, I'm not
floor,
talking
that
about
type
I'm
of
just saying
thing.
that
We
the
wouldn't get
senior
into
center
that.
is smaller, yeah.
Yeah,
Big?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's something that, if the senior center needs to be expanded, let's say by a third or
Yeah,
something, you
right.
need property, that's more of a land use.
Mhm.
Whereas the senior center upkeep and how it's done and these
No,
type
that's
of
just,
things, that's not a,
I
that's not a.
wasn't referring to that,
yeah,
it's just tight
yeah,
in there now.
yeah,
I wasn't
yeah.
saying about any of the repairs.
Yeah, right.
It's
Now,
just
the
that there's so many
POCD would
seniors.
address it, whether or not the campus here needs more parking, I would think,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, camping, camping.
Yeah, so we did.
Big car parking, easy for you to say. No, but I mean,
Allow
the
camping, by the
town
way.
hall does need more parking for the senior center when there's event, or
Yeah.
soccer tournaments,
Yeah.
or
Right.
Friday night in the concert, the
Right.
We
park.
did
Yeah.
acknowledge that as an issue here, but we wanted to save the recommendations about it for the parking, or for the transportation and mobility chapter, because then
Okay.
our
Okay.
transportation
Yeah,
plan
we'll
will
have
look
parking.
at parking townwide.
Okay.
And we
Yeah.
can, because we heard
No, I know
about
there is
other
some-
parking
Yes,
issues in
that's
town
right.
as well.
Land that
Okay.
they wanna pave, et cetera, but.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, that's,
No, no,
that's the
no,
result
please,
of
we
our
wanna hear from
average
you.
age getting older.
Mhm.
That's why there's more seniors. We went from 42 to 44 to 40, yeah. So that's
Your
what
average age
Greg
is
Dembowski
increased, yeah.
has, our
Yes.
demographic has shifted
Yeah.
older in town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've also heard that people from other neighboring towns, like your senior center and.
Well, they
Yeah,
can
they
use
do.
it.
They love it. They love it.
Yeah.
For a small fee.
They come from
Yeah.
Danbury, Bethel, everywhere, yeah.
well, I think, Emily, anything else on community facilities we may?
Yeah, I mean, there's more
Yeah.
on here.
Parks and recreation, as a former baseball coach, I gotta say, we need more baseball fields.
Right.
As a former basketball coach, we need more gym space, we absolutely need more
Yeah.
gym space.
Yeah.
And that could be in the form of some sort of, any kind of facility. And I always, the Danbury War Memorial,
Yeah.
is an example, or the Powell Building in Danbury is an example of something that I think would be, if it was put up today, it would be filled tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know?
Because we lost two at Huckleberry, those two fields.
We lost the baseball
and
fields
the,
back there,
softball
yeah,
field.
yeah.
When they finally take down the portables at Wisconsin, hopefully we'll get a new ball field there, but we're waiting and don't hold your breath.
And there's not enough room there because there was a full-size ball field in back of Huckleberry. I don't think that would fit back.
I think we
there.
lost a gym with the new school too.
You had two small gyms in Huckleberry. Now
Yes,
you have the
yeah.
larger gym in the new school that can be split. So the equivalent of two smaller. But we didn't gain it. We
didn't gain
needed
it,
gym
right.
space before that,
Yeah.
and we didn't gain any. You know, and more sports are year round too. So if you play soccer, you might have indoor soccer practice
Indoor soccer,
in a gym. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think we should go through those.
Mhm.
But the minutia of how they're, are we designing the soccer field this way, or is it with turf or not? That's something we shouldn't get into in the comp plan,
I'm just saying
POCD.
More.
However, that's right, however, if you need more, and you need more land, or you need another park, that's kind of a bigger issue, and we should put in. That we should
Yeah.
put in.
And
The way your finance guy, I liked him, as you can tell, he had a broad view, and he said, look, look, he said, that's about $100,000 improvement or something you need to upgrade the fields. He said, that's a normal, recurring expense in the budget. He said, we don't consider that a capital expense, we consider that he called it a recurring
Yeah,
expense.
recurring.
So, and I would make that distinction. If you need more, but I would say, I wouldn't get into, let's use pickleball as one pickleball court, we can mention that, but it's where you need a real upgrade on a park or Parks and Rec, that's where we should cover that in the POCD. But not, is this gonna be turf, not turf, what's the difference?
Community center's way down on the bottom of the list.
That's up to your
We
Parks
always
and
have
Rec.
basketball courts. or-
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those would be, that would be used, it would be
Yeah,
filled,
yeah.
filled tomorrow.
Yeah, so we should reflect that, yeah. Okay.
Unless there's any others that people want to bring up, we'll let you have some more time to review this on your own. And Mark, do you have something?
Yeah, one thing I was going to say was for the map of the different facilities,
Yes.
since there are some parks that are not currently highlighted on this map, is there?
So the ones that are highlighted here are just the ones that are managed by the Parks and Recreation Department. So in the next chapter that we do, the open space and natural resources, we're gonna look at those larger, like Gursky Homestead and some of those green areas.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, so we this chapter it's 25 pages already, so we would kind of think
Mhm.
by putting like all of the parks in there and open space, it would be a little too much.
Okay.
So we'll
But what
get
do
it
you-
in chapter 8, I think, we'll
Yeah.
get some of these others.
Yeah.
Now, to add to that though, this map, since it's included in this section and there are other things highlighted that are not necessarily town facilities, like I see there's a gym that's highlighted here, and then there are town properties, but they're not like recreation based, I mean like the Water Pollution Control Authority, like
Oh, I see.
do you think that if we're going to include those things on a map in it, then maybe they should have like their own map? Like one could be just for parks, another map could just be for schools, one map could be for, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, we could,
Or an
we could,
electronic one where you can put the
Exactly.
layers off.
we
That too.
could do, I think
Yeah.
we could do some of that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yes,
There's a lot of private fitness centers too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually don't
We
include
usually-
private fitness
yeah.
centers,
Yeah.
but we'll include
Yeah.
something like a YMCA or a Boys and Girls Club because
Mhm.
it's kind of a quasi
Put
community
it off.
center.
Some gym
Yeah,
owner might
that's
be like,
true.
why wasn't my gym listed?
Right.
By the way, no,
Or
that's,
change ownership.
that's a good point. Yeah, we usually don't list private gyms,
Mhm.
just because they're private.
Mhm.
And, it doesn't affect the taxpayer. But we usually try to list all your parks, all your public facilities. Yeah, I see what you're saying. We'll
Mhm.
take a look at it.
I appreciate it, thank you.
As Emily says, sometimes there's always exceptions to the rule, and I guess in many towns the Y, if the big Y or a big facility like that, and sometimes it'll be listed as a public, it's just a public amenity almost.
Yeah, or we wanted to acknowledge like there's like a few golf clubs.
Yeah, like Sunset Hill, I think that also has some historic significance to it, and then there's, since it's a very big outdoor recreation area, I think it makes sense to include something like that, but just like, a private gym, like it's a little different.
But that's where we would, we can put in a footnote, we ought to mention it, we have not included private, necessarily all,
Okay.
this isn't to inventory all private facilities.
Mhm.
Just thinking of some of the private facilities there are now, some of these,
So I got 2 lakes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 2 lakes, right, so, all right. Okay, well, we've covered, I think, Emily, anything else you think is critical here?
I had a question on table 7.2 on Williams Park where it just lists tennis courts. I don't know if this is really facilities, but one of the attractions at Williams Park is the hiking trails. It's not really a facility, but it's a feature.
Oh,
Is that something
yeah.
that would be better not listed here and left for the conservation
Yeah, I
and
think-
open space part?
I think the issue there is we didn't ask any questions about that yet, so we aren't really, like, we know that there's an issue about like trails, and we heard a little bit from Parks and Rec that there's some like controversy about the use, like passive uses and active uses on open space and land, and so we just didn't really get into that at all, so that's why it's not discussed in this
Okay.
chapter, and we were kind of like, okay, this open spaces, we'll look at trails, so in the end, we might have to
Yeah.
come back and reorganize the chapters a bit and move some things around.
And Williams Park might be talked about in two chapters.
Exactly,
chapters,
yeah.
right.
The rec
Like the
and
parks
open
map that
spaces.
you're
Yeah.
suggesting, like I could see all of these parks also be highlighted on there and highlighting all of the other kinds of open spaces.
No, definitely, I
That's
think that's a
typically
good
what
way
we
to
do,
lay it
yeah.
out.
Yeah. Oh, those are good points. Well, we're gonna make your 9 o'clock deadline.
So the
Okay,
process is,
okay.
we're gonna go through these, each one of them, provide some commentary.
Yes.
Then it gets, then once we agree on what it should be, at least at this stage, it gets posted.
Gets posted then,
Okay.
and that, our hope is, most of these, our hope, like housing and these community facilities, could be posted before the workshop,
Mhm.
but we'll have another crack at this on our February meeting, and so and then we'll have more chapters for you too. Economic development chapter, I expect not to have huge surprises, because we've been meeting, I've had 2 meetings with Greg. Thomas, who's working on that chapter, has had 2 meetings with Greg, and so we're reflecting other people, not solely Greg, but I mean, Greg's been very helpful on a lot of data.
Yeah.
So that one's underway, and as we said, transportation's underway, so you're gonna get those soon.
Yeah, and we'll try to get them a little bit further in
Yeah, a little bit
advance to the
further in
meeting. This,
advance.
I think we got a little
Uh,
bit fallen back with the holidays.
Yeah, the holidays were.
In the land use and the zoning chapter, we have the one issue that we want to,
Yeah, so I was thinking
Address.
actually of taking the goals and recommendations out of that chapter, since it's a little bit of a different kind of chapter, and moving those to like other related chapters. Like most of the recommendations there were related to housing or economic development in terms of
Yeah.
where development should occur. And so I was thinking that most of those recommendations could move into economic development, and then
Yeah, and I would say some
Yeah.
straight zoning recommendations, and at the time we wrote that, and
Yeah.
this always happens where we need to
Yeah.
go back.
Mhm.
You've identified one that I think is important in the zone that, has boating related or lake related, you don't want those zones expanded. I think we ought to reflect that, if it's a pure zoning recommendation, we ought to set the stage for it in the land use and zoning chapter.
Mhm.
But as Emily says, we may move economic development related things to, the economic development chapter. At the end, we'll reflect, I hope, what we usually try to do is have a summary of all the recommendations in chapter 10 with the future land use map. And we don't anticipate, by the way, maybe, but we don't anticipate, just following up what Emily was saying about the land use and zoning chapter, many major changes in the future land use plan or the zoning code, because we think, feedback we've had so far is, when we went over the zoning with you last time,
we've made a
you
lot
said,
of zoning recommendations in the housing chapter.
Yeah,
And there
and-
will be
and-
more in the economic
Right,
development and
that's
probably
right.
more in the conservation,
Mhm.
so,
yeah, but the zoning ones,
Yeah.
we'll have a list of those at
Mhm.
the end in the final chapter. We'll have a list of those key
Yeah.
recommendations. And I think if there's major ones that are pure zoning, like the zone we just discussed tonight on the lakes, I think we can still retain that in the zone, or we can put it in the zoning. We wanna describe that zone, we never mention it, so I think that we would keep in zoning.
So the intent is to post what we have, or do we want to hold off until?
I think
we
you
have
can post
that
what you
discussion?
have, because they're working drafts.
Yeah.
well, I don't
you
know, cause I add, I don't know, we talked about something
Yeah.
different, so we need to
Yeah.
determine whether we wanna have recommendations in that zoning chapter that's posted online or not.
I don't think we have to, it's online now.
It's not, well,
Oh,
the
it's not.
Brookfield Today is online.
I think we should put up what we have, I think it's fine, the land use and zoning chapter. We make changes and additions as we go along, as we said, it's a
Okay,
living
yeah, just as long
document.
as it's draft,
Yeah,
obviously, yeah.
and
Mhm.
draft, so
Yeah.
that when we get to the workshop, my hope is, I don't wanna bog down on, constantly changing the chapters.
Right.
And then we run out of time before the workshop, so my idea is just post what we have after you've seen it. And, you know, and then we can still make changes and additions and so on. But something, as Emily said, may move from one, it may be repeated, it may be in 2 chapters. Like we were talking about earlier, we've got the, you know, we have yet to write the parks, we've got stuff in community facilities now that you've seen tonight on Parks and Rec. What we're gonna have a separate chapter in chapter 8 on open space. And that's where we'll discuss a little bit more trails, for instance. So you might find things in 2 chapters. I think that's okay. But at the end, we will try to summarize everything in chapter 10.
But so you'll only post what we've just discussed on the land use and zoning, housing and community facilities. We'll have more discussion.
We'll have more
before
discussion maybe on
we
that
take
in February.
next step.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, for instance, if you can get us comments on community facilities, we might be able to update that and get it in shape so you can post it. Because I like the idea of, or we try to post things so that people can gradually read them, and they're not faced with, you know, a week before the workshop.
Yeah, we might be able to do that with community.
Yeah, with
I don't
community
know about
facilities.
housing. I think we should.
Housing, we
hold
can
on
wait,
that one.
we
It could be
can,
dangerous. If you want comments, put that
Yeah,
one up.
we'll get them.
no, yeah, we'll get them, and that's good. If we get
Yeah.
comments
But
on housing,
it's
it'd
better
be good.
to have something like that up there early on so people
Yeah.
know it, and then they can see the
They get used
survey
to
and
the
they can
idea.
give their
Right.
feedback. That might encourage people to take the survey,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on housing, I think what we're saying, maybe wait for the February meeting, make
Yeah.
sure we know what goes in housing, and then that can be posted after the meeting, we'll make revisions. But on community facilities, get comments to us, and if we're relatively comfortable, we'll learn from Laura. We can post that when you're, you know, once you're comfortable, so I would use your direction on it. But the idea would be to get, even, because they're working drafts, but it's helpful to get things up there for people before the second workshop so that they can see some material.
Right.
Because otherwise they're coming in kind of
And this way
uninformed.
we're doing it chapter by chapter rather
Yeah.
than throwing a book at them too.
Rather than throwing the whole
Yeah.
book at them, yeah. And then gradually, you know, after the May meeting, we've digested, you know, those things.
Maybe that's a way to get some attention to it too, though, you know, here we're posting the zoning, you know, and
Yeah.
then 2 weeks later, hey, here's the community, right?
That's the idea.
And then the next, 2 weeks later, here's the house. It just
That's
is a
right.
way to try to generate some more
Momentum.
attention to it, right?
That's the idea, to get it up there gradually.
Mhm.
And then at the workshop, we'll have a table devoted to kind of, not each chapter, but general subjects like open space, housing, community facilities, transportation, economic development. You can kind of go through them, and we'd have a resource person in each table, and hopefully, you know, one of you all to sit at, you know, break yourselves up into tables that you might be interested in. We'll make it clear that people can still talk about the whole plan. You know, you don't have to, at the transportation table, talk about solely transportation. You can talk about anything, but if you're interested in transportation, the resource person on that will be at that table. So I think it should work out pretty well. So,
Anything else?
Yeah, there's a few sheets in the back of the package on food protection, and they don't seem to fit in with the rest of what we've been talking about. In the very back of the one that, I got a chapter 4 housing package,
Yeah.
and in the back, there's a bunch of stuff on.
Oh, yeah, that's some,
Is it-
that's, Amy maybe printed something.
Uh-oh.
Okay, well, that's
She needs that.
got some extra stuff in it?
No, I got that too.
Oh,
maybe there's something else there?
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Where's mine?
I don't have it either, if it makes you feel better.
Maybe there was something left over in the printer.
Maybe they're trying to tell you.
Uh-oh.
I think here,
I don't think I have that either.
no, it was in this,
It's in this, there's
There was a
two
separate-
separate stapled packages, and it's in the
Yeah.
back of the
Oh.
smaller one.
it's in the
Maybe
housing
let's
one.
see if this one is included.
Oh,
Oh, no, yep, this is it too.
Well, what should we do about
Yeah, I was
that?
just
I
curious
don't
if
think
there
this
was no
is, I
study.
don't think this is part of the POC.
Okay, yeah.
Let me make sure you have the full chapter.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know.
You know what, that's my fault, I handed her a paper copy, I bet you I stole this off the
Look
printer.
at that, they're doing better.
So, are you telling us it's not
Disregard those other-
It is
Yeah,
absolutely
disregard, we don't have those in our
bad.
copies.
So someone's having a meeting looking.
Ooh, food production program 2024. Yeah,
I'm not
that's,
gonna lose sleep.
that's not from us.
We have a shared,
90%,
shared printer,
inspected
copier, my apologies.
No problem.
Tell me what's been as much as 10% that haven't been.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that happens to us sometimes at work, we're all.
Oh, wait.
Making
might be
sure you're
right here.
reading.
Was there complaints?
That was the test I passed.
Yeah. So, we do see you on February 20th, right? Next committee meeting, Thursday, February 20th. And we'll have more chapters, but we'll also be able to go through the housing, just to make sure, to make any revisions. Yeah. Okay.
So we should try to get any feedback on the, what's the other one?
Community
On
facilities.
the facilities, right?
Yeah. And if there's
Within
major-
what, the next week or so, and then
Yeah.
we'll post it, okay.
And if there's major comments on housing after you read it, if you get them in to Laura that, we're aware that on February 20th what they are, and you will see all your comments and make it a more productive meeting.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay.
Terrific.
Good.
Motion to adjourn.
Aye, everybody. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
On the,
So.
on the affordable, I understand.